Picking up an item when we get near it is not an ideal way of putting things together. We want the character to choose what they obtain in their game. It especially doesn't work if you gave your character the ability to spawn items back in the world when dropping them, because if it spawns next to us and we immediately pick it back up again, not only is that inefficient, but it can create bugs. So the new way we'll do it is we'll have a small prompt that shows you can pick an item up, and when we get close, it shows you how to pick it up. And that'll be with a little arrow icon and an E icon, because we'll set our button to E. So we have two icons to import. So open up our textures, inventory. Actually, let's just put this in textures. It's not really an inventory. So let's hit import, and we'll go to my resources. It's the arrow prompt and the E prompt. We'll open them, and we will bulk edit via property matrix for both of them. Compression settings will be user interface 2D, and our texture group will be UI, as always. And file, save, and close this. And we need a new widget for these. So let's go to our UMG. We can put it in inventory, and we will create a new widget blueprint. Let's call this W pick up prompt. I'm gonna make that U capitalized. And that crashed my engine, because it does not like capitalized U's. Alright, now that I've got my engine started back up, let's go into blueprints, or UMG, inventory, and open. Oh, it does not exist anymore, so let's create it again. W pick up prompt, and we can open this up. And we want to make this desired on screen, and we don't want a canvas panel. We just want a size box, and we want the size to be 500 by 500. So let's add an image here, and we will call this image prompt image, and by default we'll make it that arrow. So arrow prompt. There we go. Before we continue in here, let's put it in our pickup item to see how it looks. So let's go to content, blueprints, actors, inventory, pickup actors, and pickup actor master. So let's add a widget component. Just type in widget, and I guess we can rename this prompt widget. And just to see it better, we can pull it up. There's nothing in it right now, but we can change the widget class here to pickup prompt. And this is obviously way too big, and we need to scale it down. Now we need to use the actual scale here and not the draw size. As you can see, if I change the draw size to something like 25 by 25, or let's do something slightly bigger, 50 by 50, and we zoom in, we've got this really jagged looking look. Instead, we need to leave this draw size to 500 by 500 and mess with the scale. 0.01 is much too small, 0.1, and now we can see it is nice and sharp. And compile and save, and we can see in our world they are now above all our items. They're quite big, so I'm going to change this size to a default of 0.03 on all axes, and that looks better, even though they're way too offset. You might be able to hear my cat jumping around. She's making a lot of noise right now. Anyways, let's go back into our pickup actor master. By default, I'm going to make this sphere once again hidden in game, and by default I'm going to turn off physics so it only simulates physics after we drop the item. Alright, so we want this arrow that points at our objects to turn into the ePrompt image when we're close enough to pick it up. But we want to see the arrow at quite a far distance, so we know there's something over in that area that we can pick up. So in our pickup actor master, we want to set this default visibility to false. We want to do this visible here, not the window visibility. And you'll see in the game, they have disappeared. And we also want to change the default extent of this sphere to something more like 500 instead of 100. So something quite big. Now we want to move this character spawn point, because spawning inside an overlap sphere, when we're told to do something, that can create bugs sometimes. So I'm just going to move him back. If you hold shift while moving an object, the camera moves with it, so I'm going to just move it outside the spheres. So we start over here now. And what I want is when we enter the big sphere, we see the arrow prompt, and when we get close enough to be able to actually pick the item up, it'll turn into the E prompt, and we will be able to pick up our item. So in our pickup actor master, we want to create a boolean called update actor, and we can make it private. So we don't want to add our item when we overlap the sphere anymore. So we can break this off, and we're just gonna move all of this down. So I'm just gonna break that as well. And we're just gonna move this out of the way for now. When we overlap the sphere, I want to set our update actor to true. But before that, I want to set the visibility for our prompt widget to true as well. And we can create an end overlap on the sphere. And we can, let's bring it up here, move this a little farther down. And this will also be casting to the L1 character. And once we end the overlap with the sphere, let's set the visibility of the prompt widget back to hidden, and we no longer want to be updating our actor. So we can actually test that out now by, have to kind of go to the other side so we can see them. So we're overlapping all four, so we can see all four. And if we kind of back up, they disappear once we leave the sphere. It's exactly what we want. But we need to make sure the widget is always facing us, so we can always see it from any angle. So we'll do this with an event tick. Keep moving that down. We'll create an event tick. And we only want it to update if we're updating the actor. That's why we created this variable here. So only if we're inside the sphere, will it worry about updating the widget. So if it's true, we can get this prompt widget, and we can set the world rotation. And out of new rotation, we will get a find look at rotation. For the start location, we just want our prompt widget location, so put a prompt widget. Oh, that was my cat again. Get world location. Put that into the start. The target will be our character. So we need a reference variable for that. So we can make it in the begin overlap, since we're already casting. So we can promote this to a variable. Player ref. And plug it in right there. And we can make it private so we can access it from the children. We're getting an error because we didn't plug anything into the target, but we're doing that now. So we just have to get the player ref and then get the camera. We always want it to be facing the camera, not quite our player. And get world location. And plug that into target. So now we can test that out by hitting play. And once we enter these spheres, the widget will always rotate to face the camera. So already a good sign that we can see it when we're coming in. And as we walk around, they are always facing the camera, even on when we're below it, which we won't be soon. I understand that they're way too high at the moment. But it's good because now they always face our camera. So it looks great, but we don't want to be able to see this through walls and doors. For example, if I just bring one of these doors over and I duplicate it like this, and we go in, we can see all these. Problem is we can still see it through this door, or it's still visible, and I don't want that. So we'll do this with a line trace. So in our pickup actor, before we update the rotation, just pull this out, we want to add a line trace. And just kind of move this out of the way. We didn't pull these out far enough. And there we go. Pull this down just a bit more. Okay. The start will be the get actor, just our get actor location. It's not the correct node. Get actor location. And the end will be our player's location. So let's get our player ref, or our player's camera location. Get the camera. And get the world location. And we'll plug that into the end. And if we draw the debug type to persistent, we get kind of a cool effect going on here if we hit play. So once we're inside the overlap spheres, we'll get these line traces that go from the actor to our camera. I did not mean to make this persistent. I meant to make it for one frame. Makes it much clearer what's happening. Go in, and it's kind of hard to see actually because there's a camera, but if we move around, you can see these lines always pointing at us. It's definitely easier to see if we just get the player ref's location, or we can get the player ref's actor location. Oops. And that makes it easier to see what's going on because it's not going right into the camera. So we always have these lines going from the actor to us. And basically what we're checking is if these actors collide with something, which these three are, we don't want to be able to see those three widgets. So we can change this back to our camera, delete that. And we just want to create a branch from the off hit here. But we want to only update it if it didn't hit something. So we will add a not boolean instead of just taking it from the false. So now we can take it from the true and continue right there. If it's true, we want to set the prompt widget's visibility to true. Actually, I shouldn't have brought this back forward. Set this to true. And if it's false, we want to set the visibility to false. So we can test it out with the door now. And we can go inside here. We can see all of these. We stay inside, but we go behind this door. We can no longer see those widgets, even though we're still inside the reference. And those little red squares are these line traces because we still have it on for one frame. So let's turn this back to none for the debug type. Not only is this for just visibility purposes, but it's also important so we won't be able to pick up items through a wall. Even if we're close enough to pick up an item, if there's anything in between us and the item, we will not be able to pick it up. So we can go back to our widget pickup prompt, and we can go to the graph, delete these. We can create a custom event, toggle prompt, and we have to give it a Boolean input, and we'll call it can pick up. And we'll just get our image and set the brush from a texture. And we want to match size. And we'll get a select node from the texture. Input will be the index. If we can pick it up, or if we can't pick it up, we want it to be the arrow prompt, which is the one it already is. And if we can pick it up, we want it to be the E prompt, which is this one right here. But by default, let's keep this at the arrow. So for true, we can just set this to E prompt. So let's go back into pickup actor, and we want to create a variable. We're going to want to call this pickup distance, and this will be a float. And the default distance for picking up an item could be 150. We can make this editable, so it's easy to change in the editor. And in our line trace here, we can just break the out hint. And let's open it up. And we just have to, once again, move this down. But we just have to subtract the trace start from the trace end to see how long the length is, because this one's always changing. And if this length, get vector length right here, and if the length is less than or equal to the pickup distance, we want to toggle the pickup prompt. So to do that, after we set the world rotation, we can just get our prompt widget, and we'll have to get user widget object, and then we can use this to cast to our W pickup prompt, and we can convert that to a pure cast, and we can just call this custom event toggle prompt. And the can pick up just comes from this little bit of math right here. So we can actually test to see if this works. So let's go out and save. Let's hit play. And I guess before we get started, let's bring the widget down. It's very up high. What's it at right now? 210. Let's just put it at like something like 80 for now. See what that looks like. Okay, yeah, that's fine for now. So once we are less than 150 units away, it turns into the E. Perfect. This is also something we can edit for each specific actor just by adjusting this pickup distance. Adjusting it here in the world, we'll adjust it just for the one singular actor, or you could open it up in here and mess with it in here so that it'll affect all of these. So back in pickup master actor, after we toggle the prompt, we have to add a branch, and the condition is the same condition. And if it's true, we want to enable input. We want to be able to call input from this actor. So the player controller will be get player controller, and the target is self. If it is false, we want to disable input. So it only accepts input once we're close enough to pick up our item. What we also want to do is off this false here, if there's something in the way of us being able to pick up the object, we also want to disable our input here. So we'll call disable input, and the target is our player controller. And just as a safety, we can also call disable input once we end overlap our sphere. So disable input, get player controller, and that'll be that. Alright, so now that we can call input once we're close enough to it, we can just add a input action. Remember, this is something we said a while ago. It's bound to our E key. And to test, we can just print a string, and we will say this as pick up item. So let's test it out. In our world, we're not close to any items yet. We press E, and nothing happens. We get close enough to these where the arrow prompts come up. We press E, and nothing happens. but we get close enough to where this gives us the E prompt, and we press E, it says we can now pick up our item. Same over here. So instead of calling the print string to pick up an item, we can just replace that code with our add item right here. For the target for our BPC inventory, we can just use our player reference. So now, when we press play, and we come up close to this, and we press E, item disappears because it has been added to our inventory. And we can do that with all of them. Great. Now there's a couple issues here, and one is when we drop an item, the widget stays up there. Does not look good, it's not what we want. We want it to be stuck to our item. Another issue is every single item has the same distance between the mesh and the widget, and we want that to be adjustable. So in our pickup actor master, we can create a new float called widget distance above mesh. And we'll make that editable as well. Compile. And the default can be something like 25. And in our construction script, we just want to get this prompt widget. And we just want to set relative location, split the location, and we just want to set the Z to widget distance above mesh. This will update it to being only 25 above our mesh, and in-game that looks like this for the batteries. It looks great for the batteries, but obviously not good for this giant sphere door key. So in the door key in the world, since we made it editable, we can adjust it directly in here. Oh, I think we'll have to... Right, we can't see it in the world, so we could go in and kind of mess with it to see it back in the world, but... Or you could just play the guessing game. Let's try something like 50. And it needs a bit more, so let's do 75. I think 75 looks pretty good. So we can actually just open the BP actor door key, and we can set it to 75 in here so that every door key will be 75 and not just the specific one. Great, so now we've figured out our problem for how far above our icon should be of our mesh. But we also need them to fall with our mesh when we simulate physics. So let's go into our pickup actor master, and in the event tick, before we even update the actor, we want to set the prompt widget's relative location. Set relative location. I'm sorry, not set relative location. This time we want it world. Set world, not offset. Third time's the charm. Set world location. Plug that in there. Then we want to get the static mesh and get its world location. And let's split both of these here. The X and Y can just stay as X and Y. And for Z, we just need to add the widget distance above mesh. And now we can compile and save. And when we pick up these flashlight batteries and we drop them into the world, the widget drops with them. We can also test it by dropping it kind of into the wall here to make it bounce around a bit. And it still just stays above our mesh. And the last issue we have is when these are simulating physics. An issue we have is, especially with ones that are small like this, when walking over them, these small items can be pushed through the ground and or make your character kind of spasm a bit. If we can test it out a bit. Well, it's when we just kicked it very far. Yeah, that was a bit of a character spasm. Same with that one. and sometimes they'll just be pushed through the earth. And it can create some issues. Yeah, that does not look good or professional. We don't want our player to be able to collide with these objects, so we can go into the master pickup item and get the static mesh and change the collision presets here to custom instead of block all dynamic. And we want to set the pawn here to ignore so that it interacts with everything else except our player. So now we can hit play, we can pick these up, and we can drop them. Now when I walk over them, we no longer interact with them. It interacts with the world, it interacts with everything else except for our player. Alright, so that is it for improving item pickup.